underlying issues that contributed to the violence of July 2025 remain unresolved, including accountability measures. Distrust between Damascus and actors within Sweden province. The recent escape of detainees from a National Guard facilities, subsequent arrest and protest underscored the fragility of the security environment. Building on the findings of integrity. Difficulties surrounding national examinations this month in Sweden highlighted the depth of these divisions and the overwhelming majority of students in Sweden have now missed out on their exams for 2 years in a row. A practical solution still needs to be found that secures the rights to education of Syria has continued, including in violation of the 1974 Disengagement of Forces Agreement. Israeli forces have maintained presence in the area of separation, and others reportedly remain in Israeli custody. Protests have taken place demanding their release. Restriction on Syrian civilian access and damage to agricultural lands were also reported. And there was a further incident of Israeli settlers crossing and being returned by the IDF. The Syrian government has exercised restraint while 74 agreement, released those illegally detained, and respect Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Mr. President, to address threats from extremist networks, the Syrian authorities report having conducted extensive June attack on a security headquarters in Raqqa that killed security personnel and injured others. In addition, continued concern about foreign fighter networks of non-interference in Lebanon and its support for stability in the country, as reiterated last night also by President Shara. We hope that the recent memorandum of understanding between the United States and lira, rising electricity and fuel costs, and declining purchasing power continue to fuel frustration and social unrest. At the same time, Syrian Foreign Minister Musa Kulaklikaya and other Turkish officials who expressed strong support for a Syrian-led transition and the work of the United Nations. Moving forward concretely and constructively. But there is plainly more to do, and the mission's relocation of its Geneva staff to Damascus would facilitate that. I look forward to being in Damascus in the next
I now give the floor to Mr. Indrika Ratwate. You have the floor, sir.
And conditions for sustainable returns are still uneven across the country. This moment requires ambition anchored in realism, sustained humanitarian action, political returns. As people go back to their communities, access to basic services, protection, and livelihoods remain critical. Returns and reintegration at the same time, humanitarian operations are delivering, but resources remain insufficient. With more support, much more can be achieved. Nearly 2 million people, clean water and sanitation assistance for more than 1 million people, and further nearly 3 million treatment courses and 2 humanitarian partners responded rapidly, deploying ambulances, boats, reinforcing embankments, protecting farmlands, and delivering critical supplies to families in need. The UN, humanitarian partners, and relevant authorities to act quickly and coherently. In short, acting as one to save lives. As the floodwaters receded, the focus has shifted and damaged infrastructure are being compounded by repeated military incursions and movement restrictions. Safely. Communities are on the edge, strained and stressed by years of conflict, displacement, degraded services, and poor humanitarian access. Communities, Madam President, must be protected by years of crisis. Syria's recovery depends on ensuring they are not left behind. This highlights the complexity of the operating environment and the issues facing families. Funded. My first ask to this Council is therefore clear. Help us maintain a humanitarian response that is proving that it vision is a powerful national goal. Achieving it means investing in conditions that make solutions possible. Protection, social inclusion, demining, basic services, livelihoods, and environmental recovery. And third, we require sustained investment in recovery and reconstruction. Or recovery from long-term stability. We must meet urgent needs today while laying the foundations for lasting stability and prosperity. Development financing, economic recovery, and stronger services will be essential to ensuring that Syria's transition partnerships and putting support closer to the communities we serve. Committed and fit for purpose, the humanitarian community stands ready to meet the moment and the challenges ahead. I thank you.
I thank Mr. Ratwate for his briefing.
Syria has played a leading role in a new regional alignment of diplomacy, integration, and hope. As Syria continues on this path, with the support of the United States and the UN, there are opportunities for even more advances. increased integration into the international system, its cooperation with partners, and its efforts to dismantle international terrorist, human trafficking, and drug smuggling networks. ISIS attacks in Syria reportedly decreased significantly since January, and Syrian authorities recently announced that they had dismantled 7 ISIS cells and arrested 230 remains a significant threat, as evidenced by recent IED attacks in Raqqa, Aleppo, the Damascus countryside, and elsewhere. We express our condolences to those who were wounded and killed in these cowardly attacks. The United States will continue working with Syria to disrupt and dismantle ISIS networks, keeping Syria stable and Americans safe. We note the upcoming UN high-level conference of heads of counterterrorism agencies and the General Assembly's review of the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy starting later this week. These will be important opportunities to advance effective responses to the terrorism, whether deepening counterterrorism cooperation with its neighbors or sharing its expertise and experience through the global coalition to defeat ISIS. Syria has much to offer to advance the shared goal of peace, security, and prosperity in the Middle East. To advance that goal of regional security, we call on members of this Council and all nations to support the Syrian government, and in particular to contribute to strengthening Syria's
for that statement. I now give the floor to the delegation of the Russian Federation.
Madam President, we are grateful to the Deputy Special Envoy of the UN Secretary General situation in friendly Syria across all dimensions, from the military and political sphere to the humanitarian component. Over the past year and a half, positive processes have been taking place in the Syrian Arab Republic. This includes the gradual restoration a wide range of problems also persists, both internal as well as those related to external interference in Syria's affairs. The primary destabilizing factor continues to establish arbitrary buffer zones, constitute a gross violation of Syria's sovereignty and the norms of international law. They provoke rising tensions and undermine efforts to achieve sustainable stabilization in the country's southern region. We firmly hold that normalization of the situation to return to its bilateral obligations, as well as strict compliance with relevant Security Council resolutions. We expect that Israel will abandon its confrontational course as soon as possible and heed Syrian signals regarding Syria's readiness to come to the negotiating table to resolve existing disagreements. As we have repeatedly heard from by foreign terrorist fighters operating in the Syrian Arab Republic. We have carefully reviewed the statements by Syria's Interior Ministry dated June 15th regarding the successful conduct of a broad counterterrorism campaign over the last 3 months. During which several ISIS cells were eliminated and more than 230 terrorists were arrested. Of terrorist attacks in the provinces of Raqqa and Damascus, which claimed the lives of several Syrian security personnel. We extend our condolences to the families of the deceased and expect that as well as extrajudicial reprisals during the mass unrest on June 14th and 15th in several cities in the provinces of Idlib, Aleppo, and Deir ez-Zor. Process based on the key provisions of Security Council Resolution 2254. The East region on May 24th as a significant last month, the humanitarian situation in Syria and the chronic underfunding of the humanitarian response the country has affected tens of thousands of people, inundated approximately 2,000 hectares of agricultural land and damaged irrigation systems, bridges, water treatment facilities, and are the risks of disease spread and the displacement of explosive ordinances into residential and agricultural areas. The flooding has exacerbated an already difficult food security situation. According to the WFP, today only 18% of Syria's population This is an extremely alarming signal, particularly given rising prices and declining purchasing power. Madam President, June 20th marked World Refugee Day. This is an apt occasion to recall that for 950,000 children. The scale of returns confirms the desire of Syrians to resume normal life, but it must not create the illusion that humanitarian problems have already been resolved. More than 70% of Syria's population is in need of assistance. Many families are returning to destroyed homes, to areas with limited access In this regard, we once again emphasize that humanitarian assistance is necessary, but it must be complemented by investments in development, strengthening of necessary for the country's reconstruction. Our country is also contributing to this effort as part of a program established by the government of the Russian Federation. Syrian graduates who are right now determining their futures will, in accordance with established tradition, have the opportunity to attend Russian universities free of charge to
I thank the delegation of the Russian Federation. I now give the floor to Denmark.
Madam President, let me also thank Deputy Special Envoy Cordona and Acting Assistant Secretary General Ratwaff from war to peace. Madam President, I'll make 3 points. First, on the recent development in northeast Syria, we take note of the conclusion of the elections in the region, an important step towards the initiation of the work of the People's Assembly. Out of the 11 seats, 4 Kurdish representatives, including 1 woman, were elected, but more needs to be done to secure adequate representation our hope that the final outstanding appointments by President al-Sharaa will help achieve this goal. Denmark welcomes the progress made in relation to the military and political integration of the Kurds. A number of issues remain outstanding, political transition, and to ensure the respect of the rights of all segments of Syrian society, including the Kurdish people, to help build a future of peaceful coexistence. Second, Madam President, on the humanitarian situation, with more than 5.5 million people still living as internally displaced in Syria and over 1.7 $35 million to emergency activities for 3.4 million people. The need for this serves as a timely reminder that the humanitarian situation in Syria remained no tents, no camp approach, and welcomes a roadmap on how to best support and achieve this vision. Refugees and internally displaced continuously seek to return to their areas of origin to build a new future for their families and water supplies for the entire population. Denmark is proud to support ICRC's Too Big to Fail project with over $9 million, providing drinking water to over 12 million people. Third, Madam President, under respect for Syria's territorial integrity. The continued Israeli presence in southern Syria risks undermining and armed confrontations, placing communities at risk. All parties must respect Syria's sovereignty, political independence, territorial integrity, ensure the safety and livelihoods for its civilians, and of Forces Agreement. Madam President, in closing, Denmark remains firmly committed to supporting a Syrian-led and Syrian-owned transition. Words of support from this Council must be matched by concrete action and sustained engagement. We reiterate our call for the
delegation of Denmark. I now give the floor to the delegation of Panama. Thank you, Madam President. We are grateful for the briefings delivered by the Deputy Special Envoy of the Secretary General for Syria and the Acting welcome the representatives of the Syrian Arab Republic, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, as well as the United Arab Emirates. They honor damaging effects on education of children particularly remain. At this time, we recall the need to keep the impact of these events on Syria's social fabric at the forefront of our minds. These tragic events chart channels for communication with the Syrian government and the support of the United Nations. We are closely following efforts aimed at buttressing the political process in Syria, including the upcoming stage that will see the appointment of the remaining members of the People's Assembly by the presidency. This is a process that we reflect the country's diversity. They must also ensure the full, effective and meaningful participation of women in governance structures in the country. The presence of women in positions of responsibility, such go hand in hand with credible mechanisms for transitional justice and the search for missing persons. This is fully in sync with the international commitments entered into capacity to comprehensively address the most grave violations of human rights, including those that remain invisible or are poorly documented. Against that backdrop, the sexual violence perpetuates intergenerational trauma and undermines reconciliation efforts. In light of the above, we appeal to the Syrian authorities to continue cooperation with relevant international mechanisms We also appeal to them to strengthen measures for the prevention of violence as well as this in order to prevent paramilitary structures, remaining terrorists and foreign fighters from affecting the civilian populations or sowing destabilizing dynamics. We express our concern at the situation in the Syrian Golan local communities. Once again, we reiterate the need to fully respect the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Syria. We also emphasize the importance of ensuring that agreements and relevant resolutions that contribute to peace in the region be upheld. We value the positive presence in Damascus. Moreover, we recognize the crucial role played by humanitarian agencies, particularly OCHA, whose work remains crucial to ease the as demanded by all reconciliation and reconstruction processes. These processes are not immediate, neither are they linear, but they are vital for lasting peace. Panama recognizes in which many people coexist and forms bonds with each other. This diversity must not sow division. Rather, it should stand as a pillar of strength to build a future of peace, prosperity, and dignity for all. Thank you. I thank
UAE to the meeting. China welcomes that Iran and the United States, facilitated by Pakistan and Qatar, have launched follow-up consultations on the Memorandum of Understanding and reached a consensus on the mechanism for further negotiations. Upholding and effectively implementing the MOU will help consolidate the hard-won ceasefire and restore peace to the Middle East. And it will also help with the return of peace to the Middle East. Syria is an important country in the Middle East. Helping Syria fully restore peace and stability is the earnest expectation of the international community and should be a shared objective pursued by all parties. I would like to make 3 points. First, ensuring inclusivity is the fundamental principle of political transition. China has noted positive progress made by the Syrian transitional government in implementing the agreement on the comprehensive integration of northeastern Syria. We welcome the return of calm and stability in the region. Intercommunal tensions in southwestern Syria remain acute, and the overall atmosphere remains tense. We support all Syrian parties in adhering to the principle of a Syrian-led and Syrian-owned process, continuing political dialogue and steadily advancing an inclusive political process to ensure that the voices of all communities are fully reconstruction. At present, the security situation in Syria remains fragile. Terrorist groups are still active and continue to carry out attacks, posing a serious threat to regional peace and stability. The Syrian transitional government should adopt a firmer stance and take more effective measures to resolutely combat all UN-listed terrorist groups, organizations, activity to counter terrorism. Third, improving people's livelihoods is the most urgent priority. For some time, the Syrian dire, and challenges persist in areas such as food security, refugee resettlement, and economic development, among others. We have noted the recent flooding in Raqqa and Darfur governorates, which has had a severe impact on people's livelihoods. We call integrity should be respected. The Golan Heights is internationally recognized as occupied Syrian territory. Israel's military presence in the area of safety and security of all UN peacekeepers must be ensured. China is ready to work with the international community to play a constructive role in promoting long-term peace and stability
Madam President, at the outset, I would like to welcome Mr. Claudio Cordone, Deputy Special Envoy of the Secretary General to the United Nations. I also welcome the participation of the permanent representatives of the Syrian Arab Republic, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the Republic of Turkey in today's session. Madam President, in light of the economic openness and political advancement, this reflects growing regional and international confidence in Syria's ability to move forward on the path of recovery and its ability and to expand areas of cooperation with international partners, lift sanctions, and ease certain economic restrictions are all encouraging indicators in state institutions to create the necessary environment for comprehensive national recovery. The Kingdom is also following with interest the steps related to building national institutions, including the elections that were held in some areas to fill seats in the People's Assembly. We look forward to the continuation of these efforts to complete the legislative process and to enhance the role of Third, It is of utmost importance to respect the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic. We stress the need for Israel to withdraw from the occupied Syrian territories, including the Golan Heights. Israel must fully comply with the 1974 disengagement agreement in promoting confidence-building measures between the parties and in creating a more stable and less tense environment that serves the interests of civilians in the region. Fourth, we commend the role played by the United Nations and its specialized agencies in supporting the Syrian persons to their country, as indicated in the latest UN reports. This is a positive development that reflects improved conditions on the ground and reinforces hopes for a more stable and secure future. We also welcome efforts aimed at gradually transitioning from emergency humanitarian response to support for early recovery and reconstruction in Syria. We believe the Kingdom of Bahrain stresses that supporting recovery and reconstruction efforts, strengthening Syrian state institutions, and creating conditions conducive for the safe in the Syrian Arab Republic. And this will contribute to enhancing the security and prosperity of the region. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the delegate of Bahrain for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Somalia.
Madam President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the A3 ASG ad interim Ratwate for their briefings. We welcome the participation of the permanent representative of Syria in today's meeting. The wider international community, sustained international engagement and support are essential to preserve hard-earned gains. In this regard, the A3 would like to highlight the following points. First, the A3 underscores the importance of advancing an inclusive, Syrian-led and Syrian-owned political process that reflects the legitimate aspirations of all Syrians. In this regard, we welcome the legislative elections held on May 24 to fill vacant parliamentary seats in the Northeast, as well as the judicial and administrative understandings reached between the government and the local authorities. We encourage continued engagement by all Syrian stakeholders in a spirit of inclusivity and mutual respect. In this context, we reiterate that the Security Council Resolution 2254 in Syria. Millions of Syrians continue to depend on humanitarian assistance, while displacement, damaged infrastructure, and limited access to basic services continue to affect communities across the country. We commend the efforts of the humanitarian actors operating under difficult circumstances and call on donors to increase support to address the significant requires investment in essential services to create conditions conducive to the voluntary, safe, dignified, and sustainable return of the millions of refugees and internally displaced. Contribute to economic recovery and improve the living conditions of ordinary Syrians. While we welcome structural progress towards global economic reintegration, we note that ordinary citizens continue to suffer from severe, immediate inflationary pressures. We stress that economic stabilization remains an essential component of Syria's path to sustainable development. Fourth, the A3 remains concerned by the reports of ongoing violations Such actions risk undermine stability and jeopardize efforts towards recovery and reconciliation. We reiterate that the occupied Syrian Golan remains an integral part of the Syrian territory in accordance with Security Council Resolution 497 of 1981. We call for full respect of Syrian sovereignty, unity, territorial integrity, and political independence, and urge all parties to exercise maximum restraint and avoid wider escalation. Fifth, the A3 also notes that terrorism continues to be are deplorable. We express our condolences and sympathy to the families of the deceased and injured and wish a speedy recovery to all injured. At a time when Syrian government is intensifying efforts to dismantle this shared threat. Greater cooperation, support, and coordination are essential to curb the spread of extremist violence and promote long-term security and stability in Syria and the wider region. In conclusion, Madam President, the A3 reaffirms its solidarity with the people of Syria and commitment to supporting efforts aimed at achieving lasting
I thank the representative of Somalia for that statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, Madam President. We thank Deputy Special Envoy for Syria, Mr. Claudio Cordone, and Acting Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Enrique Ratuate, for their valuable briefings. We also welcome the participation of Syria's permanent representative in today's briefing. Latvia welcomes the positive momentum in cooperation between the United Nations and Syria, as highlighted in today's briefing. The United Nations is well placed to support Syria's efforts towards stability, recovery, and development, and we look forward to the relocation of the Special Envoy's office to Damascus in near term. Over the past year and a half, Syria's new government has demonstrated substantial progress, but full socio-economic recovery will require continued efforts and time. And international reintegration. In this context, I would like to make 3 points. First, Syria's political unity has a crucial role in the ongoing transition process. We welcome the continued comprehensive integration of administrative and security structures in northeast Syria, upholding the agreement reached last January between Syria's government and the Syrian Democratic Forces. At the same time, government's commitment to create an inclusive political environment must be maintained, respecting the civil and cultural rights of all groups in society. We welcome the recent participation in political and decision-making structures at all levels. Second, we take note of the legislative elections recently held in the northeastern governorates, which mark an important step closer to convening the People's Assembly. After years of political repression under the Assad regime, the people of Syria look forward to forming an inclusive legislative body representing Syria in all its ethnic and religious diversity. We underscore that women's meaningful participation in public life is an integral part of an inclusive political process. Government to continue its efforts of transitional justice, ensuring comprehensive accountability for all committed crimes and fostering national reconciliation. Third, we acknowledge the progress of the Syrian government in stabilizing the security situation in the country and countering Daesh, including dismantling terrorist cells, disrupting attacks, and seizing weapons and explosives. Considerably reduced Daesh attacks continue to threaten Syria and the wider region. We welcome the commitment of Syria's government to tackle the threats posed by terrorism and to take responsibility for the country. To reinforce institutional capacity, we encourage the Syrian authorities to enhance their engagement with the relevant UN counterterrorism actors, including the Counterterrorism Committee Executive Directorate and the United Nations Office of Counterterrorism. In conclusion, Madam President, after years of devastation, people of Syria are eager to build a peaceful and prosperous future. We welcome the political restraint and efforts of the Syrian government aimed at reducing tensions and promoting peaceful relations in the region and with its neighbors. Continued and reinforced support from the international community, including the UN, is essential to facilitate Syrian-led, Syrian-owned efforts
President. I thank Deputy Special Envoy Cordone and Assistant Secretary General Ratwate for the valuable briefings. Amid heightened regional volatility, the Syrian leadership has thus far shown restraint. A stable and sovereign Syria is a key factor of stability for the Eastern Mediterranean and the wider region. Achieving Syria's stability requires an inclusive Syrian-led and Syria-owned political process. To that end, the meaningful political participation of all Syrians, including women, and irrespective of ethnicity or religion, must be guaranteed. Pending the assignments of the remaining seats of the People's Assembly, we expect all segments of the Syrian society to be meaningfully represented in the country's strengthening state institutions and ensuring that all Syrians have a say in shaping their country's future. Steadfastly and unequivocally rejecting any use of chemical weapons, we welcome the constructive outstanding issues and ensuring full compliance with serious international obligations. Transitional justice and accountability must be delivered to the Syrian people is crucial for healing the wounds of the past and rebuilding trust. We stress that judicial processes must adhere to relevant international legal standards. Institutions such as the UN Commission of Inquiry or the IIIM can offer valuable expertise and technical know-how. We encourage additional and closer cooperation between these international institutions and the Syrian authorities. The security situation in Sweden and the Northeast remains a matter of concern and demands our continued vigilance. The UN Commission of Inquiry verified more than 1,030 killings committed in connection with the Sweden violence last year. This is a reminder that progress is fragile, demanding sustained effort on behalf of the Syrian authorities to deliver justice, accountability, and protection to all Syrians. Preventing renewed sectarian violence and ensuring accountability for abuses are indispensable for restoring citizenship for all Syrians. Similarly, the agreement between the SDF and Damascus should be fully implemented as it stands to contribute significantly to national cohesion and long-term stability. Turning to the situation in the south, we reiterate our full support for Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Communities in the affected areas are entitled to live in safety and dignity, to return to and freely access their property with international law. We therefore call for full respect of Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. As our briefers highlighted, the humanitarian situation remains grave. Compounding the destruction of the civil war, the ongoing conflict in Iran has driven a spike in energy and food prices, with nearly 16 million Syrians in dire need of humanitarian assistance. This reality underscores the vital importance of the newly launched 2026 Humanitarian Peace and Response Plan. Sustained, safe, and unhindered humanitarian access throughout Syria remains essential. Particular attention must be paid to the needs of children and young people who endure substandard conditions and the threat of radicalization. Educational deprivation also remains severe due to infrastructure attacks and the hazard of unexploded ordnance. In conclusion, Madam President, Greece remains steadfast in the vision of a peaceful, prosperous, and inclusive Syria, worthy of the aspiration of the Syrian people, where the rule of law and respect for humanitarian rights rest at the forefront of priorities. The UN remains an indispensable partner for Syria along its path towards recovery and prosperity, which is why we continue to advocate for the timely relocation of the Special Envoy's office in Damascus. I thank you.
I thank the delegate of Greece. I now give the floor to the delegate of Pakistan.
Thank you, Madam President. And we also thank Deputy Special Envoy Claudio Cordone and Assistant Secretary General Enrica Ratwate for their briefings. And let me also welcome the participation of the permanent representative of Syria to this meeting. Madam President, of late, these monthly reports have a pattern of progress and positivity that characterizes Syria's promising transformation towards a better future. We welcome this trend. The wisdom demonstrated by the Syrian leadership in navigating a complex regional environment while remaining focused on national priorities and recovery deserve recognition and admiration. And in a broader context, the signing of the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding and the constructive follow up engagements in Lucerne over the weekend have the potential of advancing lasting peace, prosperity, and cooperation in the wider region. And Madam President, Syria's cooperation with the United Nations that is growing is also very encouraging. Equally important is the advancement in the political transition. The anticipated convening of the parliament will be an important step towards strengthening national institutions are important developments that will contribute to stability, national cohesion, and restoration of state authority throughout the country. A political transition that is Syrian owned and Syrian led, and in full respect of Syria's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity is the best guarantee of continued success. Allow me to highlight a few points. First, from a holistic perspective, sustained and constructive engagement among all stakeholders across the political, economic, and security domains will be essential to consolidate gains and maintain the positive momentum. Second, as Syria moves forward, transitional justice and accountability will be crucial pillars of sustainable peace. In this regard, the measured and responsible approach by the Syrian authorities merits acknowledgement and our continued support. Third, Israel's ongoing violations of Syria's sovereignty, military incursions, arbitrary arrests, and destruction of property and livelihoods are highly destabilizing and condemnable. The new 5-year settlement expansion plan in the occupied Syrian Golan is illegal under international law and must be stopped immediately. All such actions must cease, and Israel must fully comply with Security Council Resolutions 338, 497, and the 1974 Disengagement Agreement. Fourth, as the threat posed by Daesh, foreign terrorist fighters, and other terrorist groups persists, continued counterterrorism efforts are essential for Syria's long-term stability and security. Fifth, given the humanitarian situation that remains very challenging, much greater support is required to fill the funding gaps and to advance economic rehabilitation and development. We welcome the constructive engagement and support of regional countries and international partners in advancing Syria's stabilization and recovery. President Pakistan stands resolutely with Syria and will continue to support all efforts for its reintegration into the international
Representative of Pakistan, I give the floor to the representative of France.
I would like to begin by thanking Deputy Special Envoy Mr. Claudio Cordone, as well as the Acting Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Mr. Indrika Ratwat, for their briefings that illustrate the complexity of the situation. From unquestionable progress towards national reconciliation and reconstruction, but many difficulties on this road. Madam President, we all think of the framework agreement signed between the US and Iran, as well as the soil, which undermine the efforts undertaken by the Syrian authorities. And we would add that any attempt to exploit internal divisions risks further compromising regional stability. The movements to which the Deputy Special Envoy referred to confirmed that justice is a central issue necessary pursuit of justice. We invite them to cooperate with these mechanisms. Next, the pluralistic system reflecting the richness of Syria's diversity. All components of Syrian society must be harmoniously integrated into these new institutions. Of the country. We encourage the implementation of the January 29th agreement between Damascus and the Syrian Democratic Forces and the process of security stability, combat all forms of trafficking, and defeat the scourge of terrorism, which remains a daily threat in the country and in the region. Programs with the recent discovery of chemical elements, thanks to the cooperation with the OPCW. Finally, it is urgent that the investors lift remaining centers and encourage the socioeconomic development of the country. The Syrian authorities aim to establish a business-friendly environment, including at the regulatory at every meeting of the Council. Syria is on a positive trajectory, gradually consolidating its unity, its stability, and its regional integration day by day. However, the challenges remain immense. Council, thank you.
I thank the representative of France. I now give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. And I thank Deputy Special Envoy Cordone It is vital that negotiations are concluded rapidly. Regional de-escalation is a chance to build stability and peace for the benefit of all those in the neighborhood, including Syria. And to pursue a diplomatic solution. The UK maintains its long-standing position that we recognise the Golan Heights as Israel towards an inclusive political transition following This includes ensuring Syria's diverse communities have their Some continue to be used to house displaced people. To ensure that all children in Syria can access safe, in Idlib and Aleppo since 2018. The United Kingdom remains firmly committed to supporting the Syrian government build stability. We encourage the international community to continue efforts to support wider recovery and help deliver a prosperous and peaceful Syria for all Syrians.
of Colombia. Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Deputy and the other representatives here with us today. I wish to emphasize 3 points. First, of all Syria's communities and the consolidation of institutions which will make it possible to overcome years of social breakdown. These institutions must with the process which brings to life the essential these actions to pick up pace, including through the timely finalization of the electoral process. high levels of internal displacement remain, and the returns of displaced persons and refugees are increasing in number. By significant obstacles hampering access that meet the specific needs of women and girls. Thirdly, humanitarian financing cannot be treated as an ancillary component for protection, education, violence. To conclude, Colombia reiterates the appeal for the full respect of the sovereignty, political independence, unity, and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic.
Madam President, at the outset, allow me to pause and recall one wound among over 200,000 Syrian wounded. The case of Dr. Rania Al-Abbas, and to move forward on the path of transitional justice without compromising. Madam President, colleagues today have commended Syria's efforts to consolidate regional stability. To announce that Syria is also participating in the campaign launched by the Special Representative of the Secretary General on Children and Armed Conflicts in order to reaffirm our commitment must bring to the Council's attention statements by the Israeli that his army will not withdraw from the areas it is violating the rights of Syrian men and women. It is violating international So what will this council choose? Madam President. The progress achieved by the new Syria is being ensuring international and UN support for this Second, Syria is translating its commitments into action. It's covered by Decree number 13. The challenge is to protect this inclusive national track from internal and external attempts that saw division among Syrian communities. Overcome the legacy of sanctions and to accelerate their integration in refugees and displaced people have already returned. The challenge is explosive remnants of war. Fifth and last, Syria continues to fight battles in the region, as well as the remnants of Assad's chemical These battles, dear colleagues, are we know that the road is not easy. Behind every stone lies a memory of pain. And in every home that is being rebuilt, there is a story of loss.
I thank the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic. I now give the
to extend its authority over all its territories. We also call upon the international community to support the efforts of the Syrian government aiming at preserving the stability of Syria, which in turn will help has witnessed a major economic shift in various vital areas. It has also attracted a number of investments from the whole world. In a very brief to that list decades ago because of the previous regime. This will help economic recovery in Syria by facilitating the flow government vision and national priorities. Madam President, we call on the international community to support the efforts of the Syrian government to combat Daesh and terrorism in all its forms. Madam President, the Arab group and would support early recovery efforts in state to create a conducive environment for the voluntary, dignified, and sustainable return of Syrian refugees. In this line, we express our deep appreciation to the pivotal role played by the host countries and call on the international community to expand the support provided to host countries. And improve the life of the Syrian people. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, the Arab group strongly condemns all incursions and Israeli aggressions, repeated Israeli aggressions against the and to peace and security in the region. The Arab group stresses the need to compel Israel people in their endeavors to build a safe, stable, and prosperous state based on justice, equality, and the rule of law in a way that would protect the rights of all Syrians. Thank you.
And Deputy Special Envoy Mr. Cardone for their comprehensive briefings. Madam President, Syria continues to move steadily along the path of stabilization. We are witnessing tangible progress across approach continue. We also attach importance to ongoing efforts to ensure accountability for past violations. Bringing to justice those responsible for serious human rights abuses committed during the former regime. Continue to be a source of concern. Israeli aggression in Sueda. In this regard, we reiterate stability and shielding the country from the spillover effects of the regional conflicts must remain a shared priority. Meanwhile, the threat poses Syria's reconstruction and recovery efforts. Rehabilitation of critical infrastructure remains among the most urgent priorities. Turkey continues to contribute to broader regional stability and economic delay. Progress in this area is in territorial integrity, stability, and prosperity. Thank you.
I thank
and Mr. Enrique Ratwat, with the statement delivered on behalf of the Arab hope after long years of conflict. As Syria moves to a phase of investing in recovery and reconstruction opportunities, laying the frameworks and enable the government to face the existing challenges. In the context of our meeting today, I would like to point to three main remarks. First, vital sectors, including in the sectors of tourism, agriculture, healthcare, renewable energy, real estate development, reflect trust in the steps taken by the Syrian government its priorities and its vision for the future. The return of trade and commercial investment conducive for the voluntary, safe, and dignified return of refugees and the internally displaced. Phase. It is also important to align the UN and donor programs and resources the return of the population to their regions recovery efforts should include also the safeguarding of the Syrian national identity sides in the Arab and Muslim world to an opportunity to improve the capacity and efficiency of the work of the UN in Syria, enhance coordination and integration among the different programs and agencies to maximize the of continuing the efforts to build and empower welcome the steps aiming at integrating Syrian democratic forces in the Syrian state institutions to strengthen the unity of the country. At the same time, there is a need to support these terrorist and extremist groups the stability and security of Syria. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United Arab Emirates for that. The meeting is adjourned.